Do you ever feel that you are lying to yourself and to the world when you say you are autistic? When this occurs, this is known as the imposter syndrome, and it is not uncommon for many of us in the spectrum, especially those of us who are either level 1 autistic or are high achieving or striving for success. In this video, I'm going to break down what imposter syndrome is, what causes it, and what we as autistic adults can do to fight it. So let's get started. Hey, Define Yourselfers, I am Chris Mitchell, aka The Confident Autistic from theconfidentautistic.com. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, welcome. I truly appreciate you choosing to watch my videos. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you will look around and see all the other great videos I have on my channel and come back to my channel in the future. I am an autistic adult, late diagnosed, a multi-certified life coach, and an advocate for autistic adults who is on a mission to empower you to embrace autism confidently. There are several ways you can help support my mission, including liking, sharing, and commenting on this video. But the best way is by subscribing to this YouTube channel. And when you do not forget to ring the bell to be notified of new videos and when I go live with my weekly Q&A session. Imposter syndrome is common among autistic adults. Research suggests that autistic individuals are significantly more likely to experience imposter syndrome compared to our autistic peers. Imposter syndrome refers to a persistent feeling of not truly being autistic, despite a diagnosis. Now, imposter syndrome often leads us to doubting the validity of our numerous experiences that have given us the confidence to either self-identify as autistic or to pursue and possibly receive a late diagnosis of autism. Imposter syndrome causes us to fear being found out as not genuinely neurodivergent, even if we're displaying clear autistic traits, essentially leaving us to believe that we are faking our autism and do not deserve the label. Imposter syndrome often leads to us experiencing self-doubt about our diagnosis, regardless of if it's self-identifying as autistic or have received a late diagnosis of autism. Imposter syndrome may be triggered by a combination of factors, including masking. Now, many autistic adults, like you and me, developed strategies to mask our autism traits to fit in with our autistic peers, which, when we do this masking, can create a disconnect between our internal experiences and how we are perceived by others. So internally we see ourselves as autistic, but when we are masking, we are pretending we're not autistic, and then our mind get confused and say, are we really autistic or not? Are we playing the role of autistic when instead of actually being autistic? So the masking, this is one of the many reasons masking is not the greatest thing for us to be doing. Now, this often the masking leads us to questioning whether our autistic traits are authentic, which can cause us to feel like a fraud. So when we're asking ourselves, is this authentic? Are we really autistic? We're questioning, we're doubting ourselves. And that doubt gets into our mind, and it's like a cancer. And it's going to make us think we're a fraud. And that can cause us damage to our self-confidence, our self-esteem, and self-worth. Another contributing factor that can lead to us experiencing imposter syndrome is the fear of judgment. Now, we often worry that if we disclose our autism to others, others may see us as not really autistic. As many people in our society have been confused by the misconceptions and stereotypes of what autism should look like. And this is one of the reasons we have that imposter syndrome, because we know internally we're autistic, but we also know from the holistic world, autism is supposed to look a certain way. It's in our societies, what we believe it to be, but we know it's different. And we have that inner conflict that we're trying to work out. And this causes us to experience imposter syndrome. A lack of validation is another contributing factor why we experience imposter syndrome. Because what our friends, family, and colleagues think often means a great deal to us autistics. That is often because we know we are different from autistics, and because the world is more than 97% autistic, we are always feeling that we must fit in to the standards of holistics, which often leads us to letting others tell us we are right or wrong on any subject, including autism, because we have often did things wrong according to neurotypical standards, or gotten things wrong according to neurotypical standards. Therefore, if our friends, family, or colleagues do not readily understand or fully accept our autism, it can further reinforce our feelings of not being autistic, which fuels our imposter syndrome. Social stereotypes also contribute to the imposter syndrome that we autistics endure and go through. Society's misconception about autism, often portraying it as primarily affecting young white males, can make us feel as if we do not fit this stereotype, especially if we are female, or if we are a minority, or as an adult, because a lot of people believe, oh, you can only be diagnosed with autism as a child. Well, there's been an increase in late diagnoses of autism, but because of this stereotype, and because we do not fit to this stereotype, it causes us to question if we are truly autistic, which contributes to our imposter syndrome. Another thing that actually we do that contributes to our imposter syndrome is comparing ourselves to others. As autistics, we may desire to compare ourselves to others who are also on the spectrum. And we do this because, okay, I'm autistic. I see this a lot in the groups. I'm not putting anyone down. I'm not calling anyone out. We do this. And because we want validation. We want acceptance. We want to feel like, yeah, I really am autistic. We want to feel like we belong. And someone will post something like, I have this thing that I do, and I like to bite my fingernails, okay, whatever. If that's something other autistic people do, we want to do that and compare ourselves to, and that helps us feel validated that we're on the spectrum, especially if we're going through the, I suspect I'm autistic stage, and possibly into the self-identifying as autistic stage. And sometimes we may even experience after we received a late diagnosis of autism, because we're going through the imposter syndrome. But as autistics, we may desire to compare ourselves to others who are also on the spectrum. We also may compare ourselves to autistic individuals portrayed in the media. And this is why there's been a big push in the disabled community over the last, I guess, 5 years or so, at the time of this recording, that we have people authentically play disabled people who are authentically disabled. We don't have actors play somebody who's autistic. We want to get people in the roles that are actually autistic and bring that reality to the show. We have the same thing with people who are in wheelchairs. We've also had a big evolution where we also want minorities to be played by minorities, etc. We want more, um, I guess it's called reality, or authentic acting in our roles. So, and that we see on TV and movies. So that's been a big movement going on. So we often may compare ourselves to autistic individuals portrayed in the media, or we may compare ourselves to other autistics we have encountered in our lives. These acts of comparison often lead to us feeling like we are not autistic enough if we do not share the same or similar characteristics as the people we are comparing ourselves to. We may feel that our symptoms are not severe enough to either self identify as autistic or warrant a late diagnosis of autism. Now, one thing I would like to just say here at this point before we continue is actually is two things. Okay. Number one, it's called a spectrum for a reason. Every one of us on the spectrum experiences autism differently. There's probably not two people on the spectrum, or be very hard pressed to find two people on the spectrum who experience autism exactly like the other person. Okay. The one of my favorite quotes is, when you have met one person with autism, you have met one person with autism. And we need to remember that none of us are going to be exactly the same. We got to stop comparing ourselves to each other, because that fuels our imposter syndrome, and we're wasting our energy on that instead of doing things that can, further the autistic movement, awareness, and to personally grow as individuals. And the second thing I like to mention is, being autistic is not a competition. We're not trying to figure out who's the most autistic person. Uh, it's not like a reality TV show. Okay, it's not a competition. So we just keep that in mind. You are a unique person. Each one of us is unique, and we need to embrace that uniqueness and know that we don't. It's not a contest to say who's more autistic than. Am I as autistic as the next person? Am I more autistic than him? Should that person be autistic, considered autistic? That's not our place. Okay, we just need to worry about ourselves. Late diagnosis of autism can also contribute to imposter syndrome. For those of us who have pursued and received a late diagnosis of autism as adults, we may struggle with imposter syndrome, as we may have spent years, if not decades, believing our challenges were due to other factors in our lives, or other causes, or contributed to other possible diagnoses. I think that's plural for diagnoses, but I don't know. Anyway, but the point of it is, we may go through those points that I just mentioned, and we're underneath the understanding you are born autistic. Okay, especially a lot of us who have joined the autism community later on in life. We know that you don't develop it in later in life. It does not. You're born with it or you're not, and it does not. You don't develop it later in life, nor does it go away in your life. It's not a temporary thing. It's a lifelong condition. And because we were not diagnosed with it earlier, now we're diagnosed maybe in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever age, 60s, or any year in our life. We're thinking, well, maybe I am an imposter. Maybe I did enough research on autism that I subconsciously talked myself into this and sort of portraying that role. And am I really authentically autistic? But you have that diagnosis, or if you strongly suspect that you are, and you're on the spectrum, and but by that suspicion, that causes the imposter syndrome. And so, don't don't question yourself. Just trust your instincts. I don't know anyone who's going to be faking that they're autistic. I imagine there's some people that will. Okay, let's be honest. Okay, but I don't think it's you. All right, because for those of us who are authentically autistic, we would not allow that to happen, because many of us, honesty and integrity is an important part of us, and law abiding, and all. We're not going to do that, and all, because the things that we do naturally. We don't have to remind ourselves, okay, I'm in a noisy room, I got to put on my headphones so people will think I'm autistic. We are genuinely autistic. We do not need to worry about this. Even if we're late diagnosed, we just got to the party a little bit later, okay? And we got to the party later because either they missed the signs when we were younger, because we were in a minority that they did not originally really intensely focus in on finding autism in, or we were so good at masking, we deceived everyone for decades, including ourselves. Another factor that could cause us to experience imposter syndrome is achieving success. And I know that sounds weird, but hear me out on this. Because autism or autistic adults are often wrongfully stereotyped as underachievers. So when we do achieve when we do achieve any form of success as autistics, it can trigger imposter syndrome as it's not something society and stereotypes see as a trait of autism. Okay, of course we know there's also the stereotype of every autistic person is a savant, like on Rain Man, okay? And even though he was a savant on certain things, I don't think he was a savant on everything. I've not seen the movie. I'll be honest with you about that. I need to see it though, but I do. Uh, but we mainly think of people with autism as people who, especially my generation, that were institutionalized. I mean, back in the 40s and 50s, I'm not that old. I was not born during those decades. But parents were told your kid has autism, maybe borderline schizophrenia. You should institutionalize him, get his pictures out of the family albums, get rid of it, and forget about him, and just move on with your life. Okay, because many were very nonverbal, had trouble communicating, behavior issues, whatever, and it gave the stereotype that we're not achievers, mainly because the definition was more of I know there's a lot of people in the community that hate this term, and I don't mean to say it to be disrespectful, but would be considered more low functioning because in the past our vision of autism were people who fit a very small mold of not being able to do things for themselves, needing constant care, all of that stuff. But now, as we've evolved and we learn more about autism, we have people who are on the spectrum, like Dan Aykroyd and Bill Gates and Elon Musk, who are very successful people in their own rights, but yet they're autistic. But because for so many years we thought of autistic people as they're the special people, they can't do anything, they're never going to achieve anything in life, because that stereotype has been so much of our culture for so long that that gets into our mind. And when we start achieving things, even though we're in the spectrum, we're thinking, how can I really be autistic? Autistic people are not supposed to be successful. Well, truth is, we are. I mean, I listed 3 in this video who are successful people. 4, Daryl Hannah leaps to my mind on that list as well. So there's a lot of successful people who are on the spectrum. So don't let that idea or that belief that because you're achieving success, you can't be autistic. You can achieve success and be autistic. It is possible. Now, how does imposter syndrome manifest in us autistic adults? The truth is, we do not help it when it comes to imposter syndrome. We can either create or fuel our own imposter syndrome by dismissing our personal struggles. When we minimize the impact of our autism challenges by thinking, oh, it's not that bad, we may be unintentionally fueling our imposter syndrome. We may also be contributing or fueling our own imposter syndrome by attributing success to luck. When we believe we did not earn our achievements, instead, they were the result of external factors, including help from others, or that they were just purely handed to us, or pure luck, instead of our own abilities, we may be fueling our own imposter syndrome. So, regardless of if you are currently experiencing imposter syndrome or just suspect you are an imposter when it comes to autism, there are a few things you should do to help you get through the imposter syndrome and get out of the imposter syndrome and fully embrace autism pride. And the first is that it is important to show yourself some self compassion. And to do this, you want to engage in self care and remind yourself that many other autistic adults just like yourself, experience imposter syndrome, and it is not a reflection of your actual autistic identity. Imposter syndrome is just a thought, it's an opinion, it's something that pops in your mind. We talked about some of the causes from it, contributing factors. It's not necessarily real, okay? It's just a syndrome like any other syndrome. It's an annoyance, and we don't want to make the syndrome or give the syndrome power over ourselves to fully believe that we're not on the spectrum. When we have received that diagnosis, we've done our homework, we've done our studying, and we are confident in saying that we self identify as autistic, or we're doing our homework and we're seeing many of the traits of autism in ourselves by unbiasedly looking at our lives and suspecting that we're on the spectrum. Don't let imposter syndrome derail you and become and you become obsessed by it, because that's only going to limit your potential, and you don't want to be doing that. You want to do everything you can to have your full potential, to reach your full potential of what you can achieve in your life. Now, additionally, if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, you should educate yourself about autism. Now, many of us who suspect that we're autistic or self identify as autistic, or maybe even have the late diagnosis of autism, have been doing this. But this should be a continuing education process for you. You should learn about the spectrum and the wide range of autism experiences. By doing that, you can help yourself validate your autism by understanding that each autistic person's experience on the spectrum is unique. I mentioned that early in the video. I wanted to mention it again. We're all unique, and every one of us is going to experience autism differently. Another thing you can do to help fight your imposter syndrome is to educate others about autism in general and your autism in specifically. When you share information about autism with friends, family, and colleagues, you can help them better understand the challenges faced by you and other autistic individuals while helping you validate your own autism. And when you're validating your own autism, you're fighting that imposter syndrome. But one of the most important things you should be doing, not just to fight the imposter syndrome, but as an autistic adult or anyone with any kind of disability, you should always be advocating for yourself. If necessary, create a more supportive environment by openly discussing your challenges and needs with employers and others. When doing so, you will be building your self confidence and your autistic pride, which will help you through the imposter syndrome. And of course, whenever you're going through imposter syndrome, if it's really getting to you, everything else you're trying is not really helping that much. And I hate to say it this way that it should be your last resort. For some of us, this should be our first resort, but it doesn't matter. You should seek support, both professional and informal support. Now, seeking support, let's say it that way, seeking support is crucial when experiencing imposter syndrome. Therapy can help you understand the roots of your imposter syndrome and help you develop coping mechanisms. And this includes talking to a therapist or a counselor who understands autism, and they can help you manage your imposter syndrome, if not eradicate it. Now, another thing you can do to get support is connect with the autistic community. Seek out autistic communities, especially autistic communities for adults on the spectrum. Finding your tribe, which is also known as other people who are autistic like yourself, who share similar experiences, can provide validation of your own autism and the support you need during the period of your life that you know is imposter syndrome. This is why you want to be in those groups. They will help you on your own realize the imposter syndrome is just a bunch of malarkey. You don't need it, that you're who you say you authentically are on the spectrum. Now it is your turn. Share your thoughts on this video. What did you like? What you didn't you like? Anything you want to share. I'd love to hear those comments. What resonated with you? Are you going through imposter syndrome? What did you do to get out of imposter syndrome? All of this can be helpful and beneficial and validating. That's what we learned today. Validating to others on the spectrum who are fighting the imposter syndrome. And if you have an idea for a topic for an upcoming video, share that in the comments as well. Or, following one of the suggestions I used earlier in the video, connect with the autistic community. You can connect with the autistic community we are building on Facebook. Our Facebook group is called Autistic Adults Embracing Autism. And a link to that group is in the video description, as well as an offer for you to get a free gift from me. So go check that out. Now, when you do comment on the video or leave a comment in the discussion group, I might not be able to respond to all of them, but I do read each and every one of them, and I really do appreciate hearing your feedback. So please continue leaving your comments and suggestions. Love hearing your comments, and your suggestions help me make this a channel that you and other people like you who are on the spectrum will enjoy and find beneficial. So until next time, this is the Confident Autistic, reminding you that now is the time for you to embrace autism confidently. Join me live Thursday nights for the Confident Autistic Live, where I answer your questions, we discuss this week's videos, offer support, and more. The fun starts Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time in the US of A. Be sure to click the bell when you subscribe to the channel to be notified when the party begins.